Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this video, we're going to write a basic web app with Spring Boot, just a really simple one to get us started. Now, one thing I want to fix before we go any further is if I look where the console normally is here, in fact, the console for some reason isn't showing, and we want to see it. So I'm going to go to the Window menu in Eclipse, and I'm going to go to Show View Console, and there we've got it. Okay, we're seeing this stuff in it because I previously started a Spring project here, which I'm going to stop. But what I want to draw your attention to is I've got this Markers tab here. I think in some versions of Eclipse this is called Problems, but either way it shows as a problem. It says build path specifies execution environment Java Standard Edition 1.6, and there are no JREs installed in the workplace that are compatible with this environment. So I can fix that, make this warning go away by going to pom.xml here. So I double click the pom.xml and then go to the pom.xml tab. And underneath parent, I'm going to create a properties section. So I don't know if there's any way to edit this by sort of through the wizard. Yeah, there is, in fact. There's a properties thing here, but I'll just do it by hand. So I create properties tags, opening and closing, and within that I'm going to type java.version, and I'm going to put 1.8 in there because that's the version of Java I'm using, and let's just format that with Control-Shift-F on Windows or Command-Shift-F on the Mac. And if I save this, if I click the Save All and then right-click my project and go to Maven, Update Project, and click OK, then that error message should go away. Well, it's actually just a warning, which may not even really affect our app, but it's nice not to see it. Okay, so now let's right-click the source main Java folder where we're going to put our Java files. Right-click that and go to New Class. So this is going to be a main class, just a normal main class containing a main method. You can call it what you want. It's good to follow normal Java naming conventions, obviously, it goes without saying. But I'm just going to call it app. I'm going to tick to say that I want a public static void main method, and I'm going to put that in a package because it's particularly bad in a web app to put stuff in a default package. Then you don't even really know if it's going to work. So you can make up something here, of course. You could use your initials or whatever you like, really. Since I've got the website caveofprogramming.com, I'm going to write com.caveofprogramming following normal package naming conventions. And we'll click Finish. So here's my main app. Now I need to add some annotations to this. I'm going to add that annotation @enable auto configuration, and I'm going to use the auto import feature of Eclipse, Command-Shift-O or Control-Shift-O, to add the import for this annotation. Spring kind of revolves around the idea of beans. Beans are just Java objects, but instead of creating them yourself with the new keyword, they are created for you by Spring. So depending on what configuration you have, Spring can create a bunch of Spring beans, and it can wire those together. So we'll see how this works more later on. But basically, if a Spring bean has a field that requires another object that's also configured as a bean, it can wire that in automatically. It can supply it instead of us setting it manually. So we just need this to basically tell Spring Boot to try to connect up the beans in whatever way it sees fit, basically in a way that makes sense. So now the basic application here is just one line of code. We need to write here spring application.run. So it's about as simple as it could be, and that takes two arguments. The first argument is the name of your main class here, .class, so it just wants you to pass it whatever your main class is, and the second argument are the string arguments from the command line here, so I'll pass those in as well. Now this isn't quite going to work by itself because we haven't said that we want to produce any content, and we can't look at this in a browser until we're serving up content. So I'm going to add an annotation here, controller. Now this is going to be a controller. Let's add the import. This is going to be a controller in the sense of the controller in Model View Controller, if you're familiar with that design pattern. And if you're not, don't worry. Basically, all it's saying is that this class is going to figure out for each URL what content should be served up to the browser. So this enables us to add a method down here that returns a string. Let's create a method. Let's make it return a string. And I can call it whatever I want. Let's call it home because it's going to serve up my home page. And we're just going to return a string from that. So I'm going to return the string hello world. So for our first app here, we're not even going to serve up HTML, we're just going to serve up text. Now this clearly is just a piece of text, it's not HTML. We're not going to, like a JSP file for example, and displaying that. We're just returning text. So I need to add another annotation here, which is response body, and I'll add the import for that with Command-Shift-O or Control-Shift-O on Windows. And that's saying that what we return here is literally what we want to send to the browser. This is literally the body of the response right here. We need, I think, one final annotation here, which is request mapping. And what this does is it says which URL this content is produced in response to. So if the user goes to the kind of base URL of the app, which is in double quotes here, I'm just going to put /, then we want to invoke this method. Let's add the import for it. And let's format this, get this in the right place. Here we go. So, oh yeah, and I don't need a semicolon there either. That's a bad habit. When the user goes to this URL, in other words, just the base URL of the app, because we're just saying / here, then that request is going to be handled by this method, and that's what this request mapping says. And the body of the response will literally be this text that the method returns. Okay, so let's try this out. Hopefully I've not forgotten anything. I'm going to save everything here. And I'm going to start it. So let's right click app.java and go to run as, and I'm not going to use run on server. I'm going to just run it as a normal Java application because we've got an embedded Tomcat here in the jars that Maven downloaded, and when we run this is actually going to start up our embedded Tomcat. Now you need to make sure there are no other versions of Tomcat running. Tomcat uses the port 8080 by default. So if you've already got Tomcat running, you'll get a message that says something like cannot bind to port 8080, or port 8080 is already in use. And what can happen is, well, let's actually just run this. Let's right click it and go to run as Java application. So here on the console, you'll notice there's a button that looks kind of like a TV screen. Let's zoom in on this. And when you click that, you can switch between any consoles that are open. So if you've got multiple consoles open, you can switch between them with this. And there's a down arrow as well that you can also click to see the open consoles. And sometimes you can try to run two web apps at the same time by mistake, and then you'll have the other one running in a background console. And before you can run a second, because the second one also has to use the same port, and you can't have two apps using the same port. Tomcat won't start them. So before you could start the second one, you'd have to close the first one, switch to the console where your previous web app's running, click the stop button there. So you probably will come across that error. I'm not just babbling for no reason here. You probably will see the port already in use message, and you need to go to the right console here and stop your other web app or the other instance of this web app that's running. Okay, so now this is running, as we can see from the red stop button being ready to use if we want to terminate the web app. So let's go to a browser, and if we go to localhost 8080, in fact there you can see a previous trial I've done here. So we need to go to localhost 8080, and then we see this hello world text. Now this is just plain text that we're serving up here. So you don't need to do what I'm about to do, and if you've got Windows, you'd have to install curl to actually do this. But just to show you, I can use curl to view all the stuff that my app's actually sending to the browser. So if I type curl, and here you can see I've just done it previously actually, let's clear that. If you type curl localhost 8080, then we can see the text hello world here. And we can use the -head option too. If we do curl -head localhost 8080. So now we can see the content header. So this is actually being sent to the browser by our application, but the browser doesn't display the content header. It only displays the content, which is hello world. The content header tells the browser what kind of content it is, among other stuff. And here we can see that the content type is not text/HTML. It's simply text/plain. So our content is going to be just plain text, and it's possible that your browser might even, when you go to that URL, it might even just try to download this as a text file instead of displaying it. But either way, it's good. Basically now we've got an application that is serving up a bit of plain text. It's using embedded Tomcat, which is now running, and our browser can contact Tomcat, and Tomcat can go to our application, find the mapping for the URL that we've gone to, in this case just the base URL of the app, and it gets back this content in response to that request from the browser. And to stop this app, which we need to do if we want to change it, we just click the red stop button here, and that seems like it would maybe just kill it in a bad way, but it doesn't. That will initiate like a graceful shutdown of your embedded Tomcat. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. If you've got this far in, congratulations. A lot of people have problems with this. Tomcat's always tricky. I think the embedded Tomcat is a bit easier to deal with than if you install Tomcat separately, but there are all kinds of things that can go wrong. So once you get to this point, you're really progressing, and everything else is arguably a bit easier from now on, although I'm sure you will encounter problems, because there always are with web programming, especially in Java, really. Okay, so until next time, happy coding.